Yeah, and I will say, it is not easy, but it is
Worth it.
attainable. It's realistic. Yes, worth it. All of
Oh
those
my
things.
gosh, it's so worth it. One little thing at a time. Sometimes you'll get a big win, but a lot
Yeah,
of times you'll get a small win. And the
yeah,
small wins are important too. I understand this about him.
yeah.
My gosh, I didn't understand this before. Now I do. And we're not telling people to put on a mask. We're saying this is you.
Where do you want your marriage to look like? Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fascinating Womanhood channel, where we talk about everything that has to do with developing femininity and building strong, long lasting, loving relationships. I am Cherry Lynn, and I am here with my mom, Dixie Andelin Forsyth. Hi.
Hi.
So, we've been doing a series and we're taking a little break from it today because we have a topic that we just felt really passionate about talking as we're entering into a brand new year. We want to talk a little bit about not only developing your femininity, but we're calling this video actually putting it on, but then taking it off. There's this kind of discussion out there about fascinating womanhood in some of our forums where ladies are talking about using fascinating womanhood and removing it at certain times. They're using these words. These aren't my words. There's a lot of questions about how to be consistent because they kind of, in a sense, the best way we can come up with this to describe it is putting on a mask and then taking it off, like a femininity mask that they like kind of like put on and then they like kind of take it off when they don't feel like wearing it.
Have you ever known anybody who, say, belongs to a church and they go to a church and they go regularly to this church and then they act like they're really interested in their church and studying the Bible and whatever their church is. And then during the week, they become totally somebody different. It's like they call it a Sunday, what they call it, a Sunday religion or something like that. When
Yeah.
ideally, if you believe in something, you make it part of your life, your everyday life. If you believe in being kind, you're not just kind when you're at church, you're kind all the time. You don't go home and children and things like that. So that's kind of what we're talking about with Fascinating Womanhood. It's who you are. We're developing this part of us, and we're never going to be perfect. It's trying to make this a part of who we are, because really, you don't take off being a woman when you come home from work. Men don't. They're not masculine at work and feminine at home. They're men, and we're women.
Well, this video is about the misconception that it is something that you use. One of the most confusing ones that I hear, confusing to me, is when they say, I'm too tired to use fascinating womanhood, meaning like develop my femininity. I'm too tired to do that because it's not who I am. And so it's exhausting. I hear that so much.
If you feel that way, you probably are missing some of the understanding of what it is.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
isn't really what we mean. It isn't something you use. It's something that you develop, that you are.
There's a lot of other ones that I can attach, like screenshots of questions that ladies have asked where they just kind of are not, or some of them even say this isn't working. I'm trying to use fascinating womanhood, it's not working. Well, we want to get into that today, and we're going to discuss. There's more than eight, but 8 tips to adapt femininity and fascinating womanhood specifically, because that's what we're trying to spread awareness of on our channel, to help you to adapt this in your everyday life more seamlessly so that you don't feel like you're putting on a mask that's not you.
That's not you. Yeah.
So before we get into the 8 tips, why is this happening? What are some of the root causes of why a woman would feel like femininity is not working for her?
Well, using something, it sounds like you're using it for a specific purpose, which is kind of touches a little bit on manipulation, which none of us want to do, but sometimes we accidentally fall into that. So it's a lack of understanding of what we mean by some of the principles. And I don't blame anyone for having a little bit of trouble with this at first, because nobody in this group is over 100 years old. And even if they were born then, they wouldn't have been influenced as a baby by some of this philosophy that's been spreading all over the world. And it's confused women for over 100 years. And it's really a lot longer. That's when it's been the most widespread, is at least 100 years. And so we're having to kind of get over that before we can even move forward with some ladies. The other one is you're maybe angry or blaming others. A lot of times the men in your life, maybe family, whatever, exhaustion. You feel like you have poor results. But the other thing is maybe you don't understand or give yourself a little bit of credit for your own background, what you saw. Did you have any role models in your life? Have you had seen anybody who you think even remotely lives this. So if you can't kind of picture what it's supposed to be like, it's extra hard. And some ladies I've known have said there's not one woman that they know of that remotely even looks like this, even one part of it, character, femininity, understanding men, none of it. So that becomes difficult.
Another point that I would like to highlight that goes with the lack of understanding is that you can study and read about any subject. I mean, think about people that go to school to be lawyers and doctors and a lot of professions that require so much studying, of course, which is important, but when you actually get into your profession and do it, it's completely different. You think about maybe like a doctor and he's in medical school, when he goes into some of his classes to actually perform things is when you really are really having to learn those things so much more deeply than if you're just reading about it. And I think a lot of ladies, going back to the understanding, they're reading Fascinating Womanhood and they're seeing all these principles and they're saying, I got it. But then it's in their life and it's surrounding them and they don't connect how to use it in their life. Does that make sense?
Well, and yes, and that's a really good point. Some of you know we've got a lot of medical doctors in our family. So your little example of medicine is a really good example, because when you go, some of you already know this, but when you go to medical school, the first couple of years is all book learning. And you learn all this stuff. There's biology and you have to learn every bone in the body and all this stuff, memorization. Then you get into practical stuff where you actually see patients. You do rotations in hospitals and you have to experience it. That's where you really learn how to do a gallbladder operation, for example.
Right.
Like that. If that's what you're doing, you actually do it. You don't just read about it in a book. And Bob, being, a lot of you know, he's a neuropsychologist, a brain guy. He says, when you can learn something really fast, like you can read a book and decide, you know what, I want to be a better housekeeper. But then actually taking that knowledge and putting it into practice so that you actually do that on a regular basis takes practice and time for your brain to actually change. And it does. You develop those pathways and you can actually form a habit. But just reading about it and saying, yeah, this is true, does not change you by itself.
Right. And any profession, such as what we're mentioning, like a doctor, any profession, you don't say, oh, I'm so exhausted being a good doctor. Like, I'm tired of being a good doctor. I want to be a lame doctor for a minute because I'm tired.
I want to tell all the patients to just deal with it. I don't want
you can't be inconsistent and be a successful in any profession. And we're just using doctors because it's the first thing I could think of. But I'm sure there's thousands of professions where this would be a great metaphor too. But I think the point here is that we're trying to explain it in that way because it's really mostly a lack of understanding.
Don't be hard on yourself because this takes time if it's something you have not learned.
Right. And I know, like for me, I'm a very visual learner. And so all the jobs I've had, I have not struggled, but I felt really challenged, like going through orientations and things because I'm reading the rules and I know that I'm getting ready to go out there and actually do some of these things. I'm specifically referring to back in the old days when I was in food service, when I was in college. You go to Panera and you have your orientation and they explain all the rules and they tell you how to do everything. But then when you actually go out there and it's lunchtime and everything's going fast, it's so different. And that's what this is. That's what, it's such a kind of a silly and simple example, but it's very similar to how your emotions are and how you learn things. And so
it's true in everything. If you want to learn a foreign language and you go to school and you study it, then you go to that foreign country. It's like, I don't know any French at all compared. Yeah. So you have to experience and hear the dialects and there's another level to learning. And that's what we're talking about. So these tips are to help you kind of get there a little easier.
Okay. So what's the first one?
Study. That's the book part that we're talking about. Study our books and the workbook. The workbook is key because you actually write in it. Yeah, you actually write in it. It's personal for you. You don't just study concepts. You actually write personal things in there and adapt it to your own personal situation. And also the love journal. Now we created this for ourselves, but I actually really have grown to think how valuable it is in recording things, this helps you to go back and record your successes, things you've noticed about him. It's treasure hunting with your guy. It can be a boyfriend. It can be, for a lot of us, it's our husband. And this is extremely valuable in helping you learn these principles.
Yeah, I think the main message, I don't want to make it sound like we're just here to, sell a ton of books. We're here because we want to explain these tools. Of course, we want you to read our books, and that's what we're passionate about. But really specifically, these tools, a lot of ladies don't know about them, and they think, oh, well, that's optional. And in some ways, I wish that the books were combined with the workbook, if there was a way we could do that, because it's that important. And this book is that important when you're reading Timeless, because it has all the study parts and the questions in it. So if you're somebody that learns a little bit more in this way of challenging yourself with scenarios and things like that, this will be so much more helpful.
Oh, I know. And you'll understand the principles easier.
You mentioned videos. Our videos, we try to break everything down, and these are of course free. So you can come on here and request things and just studying, and the videos help you study. It's kind of a companion with all of it.
The next one next to that is practice. You got to practice these things in your personal life. And it isn't like, say you're not married, you don't even have a boyfriend. You practice these principles on everyone, because they're principles. They're not all about romance. They're how to understand, accept people, and treat people. When I was a kid and my mom's book first came out, didn't really have a boyfriend. I practiced on my brothers, my father, on my uncles and grandparents and things like that. And women too, not just men, because these are principles, and women respond to girlishness as well.
That's true.
Okay, so you practice. The next one is observe women who do it well in life or in movies. So if you say, I don't know anybody who does girlishness, we on our YouTube videos will point out videos where different characters do this and point it out so you can see them. Now they're just roles, but it's the same idea. And then the next one is try to associate with like-minded ladies, which is what we have on our Facebook group and the people who comment under YouTube and Instagram and everything, because there's a lot of us. There's a lot more than you know.
I have heard a lot of ladies say that they don't want to join Facebook. They don't want to, it's just not for them. And that's fine. But I will just say, even if you made up an account that doesn't have your picture, doesn't have your correct name, and just observe. I think even just reading some of our threads are so incredibly helpful. And we jump in there as much as we can too, to kind of help give our side of it. But if you can get in there and read some of those forms, it's completely free to do that. It will help you to say like, oh, this lady is going through this, and this is what she's asking. And then there's tons of advice. Some of the advice is not always.
Yeah, you do have to be
our principles.
You do have to be careful of advice, because not everybody on there knows much of anything or has even read any of our books. So if they give you advice, you got to kind of be
But in a way, it's helpful to see even some of the poor advice, because it could be mixed in with really good, and you can see the point of view of many women, and hopefully some of the more experienced ladies jump in there too. And you can see, oh, in that situation, I actually would never have done that, but I can see where this conversation is going. So that's just a small piece of it. And it's tough. I don't have anybody near me that lives fascinating womanhood principles. I don't have any women near me that are stay-at-home moms that are really invested in femininity and homemaking and all those things. Like, I don't have anybody. But to hop online and to be able to have a support group and to watch videos on YouTube, that actually really sets that tone and brings you back. The
next one is to develop a better mindset or mentality, changing the way you view these things by studying these principles. It kind of naturally comes along with doing the above things that we just talked about.
What does that mean, develop a better mindset? Like what? Because
challenge your previous ideas about, like, no men can be trusted, for example. That I hear that a lot, the sarcastic attitude about men. Yeah, there's some really bad men, but there's some really bad women. And we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. There's a lot of really good men. And so challenge the attitude of I can't trust men, or some of the other ones that we develop, like I'm too busy to be feminine. That one. Just think, is that really true? Challenge it. Is that true?
I like what you're saying about some of your previous ideas, because a very common one that I hear, I know you mentioned men can't be trusted. That's a common one, but another common one is just appearance. Well, I don't want to dress this way because I just, I was raised that that's just, I don't know. I'm trying too hard. Or that's not
Vanity
me.
is something.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. And I think developing your mindset, it might even start with your appearance. And I don't mean that you need to, like wear like pink and ruffles and stuff. I'm just saying maybe it's just simply about changing the way you perceive femininity. You might
Well,
see it as pink and ruffles, but it might just be as simple as just better self-care and better self-talk.
well, the way you move, and some challenge the idea that I don't believe in makeup, for example, and challenge it to the point where you don't have to look like some extreme thing, and that makeup was designed to make us look better, younger, to cover up bags under our eyes and wrinkles and things like that. It doesn't even all have to be something that looks like you're even wearing makeup. Challenge it and like, is that really true?
When I say that I can't wear these things, is that really something that I've even given a really good try?
Yeah.
I really invested in how I move, how I walk, the way I dress, or how I take care of myself. It could be a million different things, but I like what you say about things that you've learned from the past, because that really connects the dots for me.
Well, an experiment, like for example, when you go to some extra effort to fix up, to do something with your hair, maybe put a little makeup on, and you feel like you look attractive, how does that affect your day?
Yeah.
And notice how you feel when you do that. That's kind of what we're talking about, challenging it. Like, I may be used to wearing pizza clothes all the time, but how do I feel when I don't?
How am I perceived by others when I don't?
And how do they treat me?
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is a really good one. Treasure hunt for little successes. And that means kind of like what we're speaking to before, all these tips all kind of naturally flow into the next one. Because when you treasure hunt, it means you notice when something is better, is succeeding, how you feel, you notice how you feel, you notice how others treat you. Sometimes we don't even notice how others treat us, how they perceive us.
I like what you're saying about the treasure hunting. I think a lot of people hear that term though, and they go, huh, what is that? And I think it's just about literally looking for tiny, tiny little treasures in your everyday. It's actually a very simple concept, but it's actually somewhat tricky to do if you're not in the habit of it.
Once you get in the habit of it, it's actually pretty easy. And that's kind of what we're doing with the love journal that you showed before. You're treasure hunting for things in your husband. And when you do that, as you record them, you'll notice more.
I love that one. Valuable lessons he's taught me.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about with treasure hunting, but you can treasure hunt with others. Treasure hunt what their motive was. A lot of times you'll find that you're more forgiving and kind if you think, well, this person doesn't agree with me about that, but they're actually kind of believe similar things. They just go about it a different way. And that makes you more tolerant. And more tolerant actually helps you live these principles better.
And here's the thing too, if you are more tolerant and you haven't been in the past and you do it, that's a win. And I think it's just so important that you celebrate that win. And I don't mean like celebrate it, like have a big party, but just do something kind for yourself and tell yourself like, hey, I really did that. And it made a difference. Like,
and one little thing at a time. Sometimes you'll get a big win, but a lot of times you'll get a small win. And the small wins are important too. Like I understand this about him. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't understand this before. Now I do. And when you actually do understand it, it'll affect how you treat him from then on. And then the next one is consider the alternative, which is like, that's what you've had all this time, even before you even met him. The way you are with others, not just him. If you don't like the life, your life is going, your personal life, your romantic life, consider the alternative of not doing these above things.
I'm going to pull this comment that I have up here. Does anyone have any advice on living FW when you're really tired? It seems that when I've got enough rest and sleep, everything comes more easily. But when I'm tired, I find it difficult to want to bother doing stuff for my partner or practicing FW. So one of the reasons why I wanted to read that one when it comes to consider the alternative is if she were to, this person's saying that she's tired, she's exhausted by practicing FW, trying to be more feminine, she's going to work or whatever it is that she's doing and she's tired. So what is her solution here? Well, the alternative is if you don't keep practicing Fascinating Womanhood and learn it and have it to become a part of you in second nature, what's the alternative?
Well, it doesn't make you happier. And by the way, that comment sounds like she's in the basement. Now, those who've read Timeless know what that means. It's when you're in the bottom part of your mind where it's on survival. where it's about surviving, I'm tired, I'm hungry, and those kind of things. And it can make you more negative. It isn't something that you believe is valid in terms of, therefore, I'm not going to treat this person well.
Well, and she said in the end, it said something about her becoming cranky and outbursts, verbal outbursts coming. And that was kind of like the end of the story. We didn't really get a whole lot of details, but I think that one is really a great example of something that we hear often. And what made me think of it when you're talking about what's the alternative is that she is downstairs, as you mentioned. She is kind of in a negative place. And the only way to get back up is a little bit of hard work. And I think she subconsciously is perhaps asking for a trick or something quick and easy, which we all want, right? I mean, we all want to, lose weight in a day.
It's not that hard. It's easier to practice fascinating womanhood than to deal with arguments and fights. It's way easier. It's
but
just
that's what's missing.
Habit.
Yeah.
You're not in the habit. Missing. I mean, it's not easier to not be speaking to your partner and have a lot of discord. It's not easy.
Right. And I think that's where I'm going back. We come back full circle with the alternative. Well, the alternative for her, if she's not willing to put in the study and the work and know that at the finish line, it won't be as exhausting. You will learn this. That's the biggest misconception. I swear at the finish line, there is a wonderful reward for you waiting. You're just not there yet. And that's why you're exhausted. Don't give up now. You're halfway there, that kind of way.
It's like when you're cooking a big meal, if you get in the habit of cleaning as you go, it's not near the work to clean up dishes or clean up your kitchen if you've cleaned as you go, rather than you create this giant mess and then you look back and you have a big mess to clean. So that it's the principle that we're talking about. It's way easier to work on this as you go. It's less exhausting than it is to let the thing kind of fall apart and cause a disaster and then try to repair that.
Yeah. And I will say, it is not easy, but it is attainable. It's realistic. Yes. Worth it. All of those things.
Gosh, it's so worth it.
So worth it. Don't give up now.
No, to have a lifelong love affair with this man that you love is worth it. It's absolutely worth it. And to have him adore you is worth it.
Well, and you mentioned in this, I keep going back to this comment because I think it's, again, such a great example. She wasn't happy. Right. Even if maybe her marriage was pretty happy, but her personally, she's going through some things. Practicing these things will help with both. It will help with your deep and inner happiness, and it will help with your marriage. So just don't give up. That exhaustion is coming from a place of, I'm not at the end yet. I haven't learned how to make this a part of me.
Well, maybe you're in the book learning stage. You've been in the book learning stage and you expect that it should translate overnight into experiential. And that takes longer. It takes longer for your brain to create those new networks, but that's okay. You can just be patient and realize it's not meant to be an overnight thing. Yeah. Consider writing out your goals for your marriage. Like, do you want to get so that you have no arguments ever with your husband, or very few? Is that what your goal is? What would you like? What do you want your relationship to look like? Do you want to be more polished? Do you want to feel better about yourself? What exactly are your goals? And that will help.
I think having something at the end, as we were mentioning earlier, kind of like the finish line, I think having something there that is waiting for you will help you to have a little bit more motivation. These ladies that say that they're exhausted at practicing all these principles and like trying to be more feminine and, trying to be better homemakers and all these things. There could be so many goals that you might have, but make specific goals for yourself. I love the one about not arguing because it's so simple. It doesn't cost anything. It's such a huge reward. And a lot of us don't think of it, but I'm going to make a goal that I do not argue. You can't make a goal for him to not argue, but you can make a goal for yourself. I am not going to engage in any arguments. And let's see if I can go a whole year in my marriage without any. Try going one day or 1 week. Because for an argument to happen, it takes two people. Your husband can't argue by himself if you do not engage. And it's hard sometimes not to, especially if that's where you kind of automatically go. You feel defensive. And so you defend yourself, but it doesn't ever work. And as all of us know, nobody wins. So there's no point to it. So if you think, no one wins these. So in the beginning, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to diffuse. Well, and write those goals. I know in the beginning of the workbook, for those of you that have the workbook or were thinking about purchasing it, it actually does have a section in the very beginning. I won't show mine because it's all filled out, but it does have a section in here where it says, what are your goals in your marriage, or what do you want your marriage to look like? If you write that down and say, whether it be, I want a really romantic marriage, or maybe you get more specific and say, I want something that resembles when we were dating. I want that back. Write those things down. I think it will really help you in your journey to be more consistent and not have this mask that you're putting on and off. Like, that does sound exhausting, doesn't it? To wear two different.
It means the one is not real. One is, and you want the one that's you to be the real thing. And we're not telling people to put on a mask. We're saying this is you.
You don't use fascinating.
Not you. No, you don't
live
use
it.
You practice it. You live it. You don't.
I don't want to make it sound like we're like, a religion or anything like that. It's more just like a really, really great set of principles to live by. It's just life-changing.
That's good psychology. Bob said he would recommend this to any professional for marriage.
And I know we went through 8 tips, and I think those are great. And thank you for going through all those. But I did want to say that we did just have like a little bonus one at the end, that we do have fascinating womanhood teachers. We don't have a ton of them, but we do have some. And that could be a really, really great way for some of you ladies out there that feel like they're not getting the full benefit of fascinating womanhood, and you believe in it, but there's some things maybe just aren't working and they're missing. A fascinating womanhood teacher is a really, really great tip, because you can ask questions and talk to someone. They can kind of help you problem solve a little bit more of some of your questions.
Good tip. Yeah, I agree. I just really believe in women. I think that because we are natural nurturers, we are really the core behind civilization, because we give birth to every person who's ever been born. Yeah. And we can absolutely turn this world around if we can get these principles out there and teach enough women that can make their homes strong, their marriages strong, and then their children will be strong, and they'll grow up in the best environments they can. And that's our goal.
Thank you so much for sharing all this amazing advice. This was a fun discussion. I know we were having so much fun with our Disney Princess series, but this was a kind of nice little break that we wanted to take just before, like I said earlier, getting into this new year. You're going to have new goals. Hopefully you're going to want to challenge yourself a little bit. And these are some really great things that you can do heading into the new year to help you become just a better version of you, not be a different you, a better version of you.
Yeah, just better. And with these specific tips that we give you in the books, the workbooks, and in the YouTube videos.
Yeah. All of the books that we've mentioned in this video, along with others that we didn't mention that are all part of our library, are all attached below the video. So click on any of those links to find those books. And we also have a Facebook group. That link is attached to the video, as well as our Instagram account. And please hit like and subscribe on our video if you like our channel, because hitting that like button really helps our channel grow, as well as that subscriptions. And we are here every week. Don't forget to check back with us next time. And we will see you then.
See you then.
Bye.